My ex always said he was a genius with money. Some people study wealth. I feel it, Owen would tell anyone who asked how he could afford the designer clothes, the sports car, the impromptu getaway to Paris that made it to Instagram before I even knew he'd left the country. But here's the thing. When we were together, he was broke. I don't mean trying to save for a condo broke, I mean borrowing my debit card to buy gas broke. And then poof. A year after we split, Owen Prescott suddenly owned a tech consulting firm, sponsored events at elite charity galas, and according to an article I wish I never saw, secured a private estate overlooking the water in Carmel. And I didn't even get my $40 back for the gas. So yeah, maybe I was bitter. But I was also confused. Until I went back to the house. The one I grew up in. The one that held a secret no one ever thought to uncover, until I did. But let me back up. Just a bit. Because if I'm going to tell you how I discovered the hiding place that made Owen a millionaire, you need to understand what led me home in the first place. It was a Tuesday morning when my sister called. Dad passed. That was it. No preamble. No softness. Just 3 words that cracked something ancient in my chest. I hadn't spoken to my father in over 6 years. We'd fought over money, ironic now, considering how the story unfolds, and I left town shortly after college to build a life in Denver. I went from receptionist to regional director in 5 years. Bought a townhouse. Got engaged. Lost the engagement. And then the call came. Dad died. And left the house to both me and my sister, Grace. He didn't have much, she told me, but he wanted us to sell the place together. Equal split. I flew out the next morning. The house hadn't changed. Same cracked shutters, same rusted mailbox. Same smell of cedar, pipe smoke, and dusty linens the moment you walked in. Grace met me on the porch, arms crossed, half smile loaded with tension. We hadn't seen each other in person since Mom's funeral. That was 4 years ago. I'll start boxing the attic, she said. You handle the office. That man kept everything like a crypt. She wasn't wrong. Dad's study was a time capsule, his desk still cluttered with unpaid bills, old Veterans Affairs letters, and Polaroids of people I didn't recognize. One entire bookshelf was just manuals for machines he no longer owned. I almost gave up halfway through. But something odd caught my eye, a stack of receipts tucked between the pages of a 1974 field journal. They weren't for tools or groceries. They were for safe deposit boxes. 3 different banks. 4 boxes total. All under my grandfather's name. Grandpa died before I was born. My mother never mentioned him. And Dad never kept old receipts unless they meant something. I shoved them in my bag. It was around 11 p.m. when I walked downstairs to grab bottled water. That's when I saw it. The floorboard in the hallway was lifted. Just slightly. Like something had warped it from underneath. I crouched down, pressed my fingers against the edge, and pulled. The board snapped up. And under it? A metal lockbox. No dust. No rust. Freshly placed. My breath hitched. I looked around, like someone might appear and stop me, and opened it. Inside, an envelope labeled for Charlotte. My name. In Dad's handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. There was no letter. No explanation. Just a flash drive, and a photograph. Of Owen. Standing in front of our childhood fireplace. With a crowbar in his hand. Hey there, before we go any further, if you love true story-inspired drama, emotional twists, and jaw-dropping revelations like this one, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. It truly helps support this channel and brings more untold stories to light. Thank you. I stared at the photo for at least a full minute, trying to make sense of it. Why would my father have a photo of my ex? Why would Owen be inside our house, after we broke up? And what the hell was he doing with a crowbar? I ran back upstairs and plugged the flash drive into my laptop. One file. Titled, Access Point. Inside the folder? Dozens, maybe hundreds, of scanned documents. Bank transfers. Company registration papers. A signed NDA. Property title deeds. Digital statements from an investment portfolio under the name Leland Ventures, LLC. Owen's signature was on nearly all of them. And so was mine. Forged. I slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding. Suddenly the trip to Paris made sense. So did the estate in Carmel. He'd found something here, and somehow used it to create wealth that didn't belong to him. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I told Grace I needed more time with Dad's files. She didn't ask questions. I spent the next 6 hours cross-referencing the receipts from the journal, the digital statements, and my own memory of when Owen first started acting strange, buying clothes he couldn't afford, making shady comments about having plans bigger than anything I could understand. Then I found it. Tucked between old blueprints of the house was a sketch drawn in pencil. A narrow room behind the furnace. Marked storage, CH only. CH. Charlotte Helen. Me. That night, I went down to the basement. The furnace room was always freezing. Smelled like coal and regret. I moved the shelving unit, nearly breaking my back, and behind it, in the far right corner, a notch in the paneling. I knocked. Hollow. Pulled. It gave way with a creak. And behind it? A narrow crawl space. Inside, a black duffel bag. I dragged it out, coughing from the dust. Opened it. Cash. Stacks. Neatly banded, each labeled. And under the cash, an old tape recorder, batteries still in place. I pressed play. If you're hearing this, Charlotte, you found what I was never brave enough to give you in person. It was Dad. Owen came to me a year after you two split. Said he found something in the walls. He said he'd share it, help the family. Said he'd invest. I let him take half the cash in exchange for setting up a trust in your name. But the trust never came. I dropped the recorder. I couldn't breathe. Owen didn't just steal from me. He conned my father. And now he was flaunting the life he built with it. But he had no idea I knew. Not yet. I stood in the middle of the basement, light flickering above me, and realized something else. There were two kinds of revenge stories. The ones where you burn the whole world down. And the ones where you build an empire out of the ashes they left behind, and make them watch. I knew which one I was going to choose. I didn't leave the basement until the sun came up. The cold floor, the flickering light, the echo of my father's voice replaying in my ears, all of it kept me still. It wasn't grief. Not exactly. It was betrayal, buried so deep it was practically fossilized. My father, for all his flaws, trusted Owen, believed his promises, handed him half a hidden fortune and expected him to take care of me with it. Instead, Owen built himself a mansion. And gave me nothing. Not even the decency of a lie I could believe. I spent the next 3 days inside that house. Grace didn't ask questions, but she wasn't blind. She knew I'd found something. She just didn't press, which I appreciated. We'd both grieved our parents in different ways. She chose distance. I chose silence. But this wasn't about grief anymore. This was about truth. And revenge. Not the impulsive, screaming kind. But the cold, calculating variety that sticks to your ribs and makes you rethink everything. I started by tracing the name on the scanned trust documents, Leland Ventures LLC. According to the digital files, it was created a year after Owen and I broke up. The same week I had surgery for a ruptured appendix, actually. I remember it because he never visited. Said he was working on something big. What he was working on was a fake company with a bank account linked to a Cayman address. He used the family's hidden money as seed capital. I contacted a friend I knew in investment banking, someone I hadn't spoken to since grad school but had once helped with a job recommendation. I told her I needed help, off the record. Within 24 hours, she sent me a file. It was a gold mine. Or a landmine, depending on how you looked at it. Leland Ventures was real. But not registered in Owen's name. It was filed under a shell corporation, one whose CEO listed a New York address. That address belonged to Owen's current girlfriend, Emily Townsend, a woman who, as it turned out, used to be my coworker, and had once asked me about Owen at a company retreat. I had no idea. Until now. I printed everything. Put it in a binder, old school. Because if I was going to confront Owen, I wanted him to see it. Feel the weight of the truth. Page by damning page. But first, I needed leverage. Because this wasn't just about getting back what was mine. This was about teaching him the one lesson he'd managed to dodge his whole life: consequences. I waited until the estate auction. The one he was so proud of. A black tie fundraiser in Napa, benefiting some vague tech access for all non-profit Owen supposedly sponsored. His name was listed as a platinum donor. I RSVP'd as Charlotte Hopper, health tech legacy consultant. It was vague enough to get in, impressive enough to be remembered, and fake enough to be useful. I wore red. Not wine red. Not maroon. Fire truck, show-stopping, lipstick says I mean business red. The room was filled with the usual suspects: crypto bros in velvet blazers, Silicon Valley heirs pretending to care about rural broadband, influencers live-streaming their dinner plates. And then I saw him. Owen. Tall. Confident. Clean-shaven and smug, like success had given him a facelift. He didn't notice me right away. But Emily did. She froze mid-conversation, face dropping like she'd seen a ghost. I walked up to the bar, ordered sparkling water, took a slow sip, made eye contact with her, then walked away. Let the games begin. They approached 20 minutes later. Owen looked amused. Emily looked terrified. Charlotte, he said, flashing that conman smile. Fancy seeing you here. I didn't return the smile. Instead, I handed him the binder. He took it confused, flipping it open. First page, the trust document. Second page, the forged signature. Third page, the Cayman transfers. Fourth page, Emily's name on the LLC registration. By the sixth page, his face changed. Gone was the confidence. In its place? Calculation. His mind racing through options, alibis, damage control. Emily opened her mouth. Don't, I said calmly. I know everything. The hiding place. The money. The fake company. My forged signature. I leaned in. And the fact that you conned my father out of a fortune he built for his daughters. Owen cleared his throat. Look, I can explain. You can return it, I interrupted. Or I go public. With everything. I pulled out a flash drive. Local news. The IRS. Your clients. You choose. He stared at me. You wouldn't. I smirked. I already did. It wasn't true. Yet. But he didn't know that. His eyes darted to Emily. Did you know she was coming? She glared. Did you know that money wasn't yours? He turned back to me, voice lower now. What do you want? I took a deep breath. I want what's mine. Half. In cash. No media, no police, no lawsuits. Just quiet restitution. He scoffed. That's blackmail. I raised a brow. It's math. We met in private 2 days later. His lawyer was twitchy. I recorded everything. The check was for $870,000. Not everything. But enough. Enough to rebuild what he tried to steal. I didn't tell Grace. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because the best part was coming next. A month later, I launched the Charlotte Fund, a micro-grant program for women whose exes left them in debt, legal limbo, or worse. The first story I published anonymously on the site? Mine. Within 3 days, it had 100,000 shares. Within a week, it was viral. And Owen? He tried to play damage control. Released a statement. Blamed a paperwork misunderstanding. But the internet doesn't forgive easily. Especially when you rob a dead man's daughters. Back home, I visited Dad's grave for the first time in years. I stood there with a flash drive in my hand and said, "You trusted the wrong man. But you raised the right daughter." Then I buried the drive next to him. Because the truth? The real truth? It wasn't about the money. It was about closure. And the fact that Owen Prescott would never again sleep soundly in a house he didn't pay for. It's one thing to win. It's another to keep winning while the people who tried to bury you watch the bloom. Owen thought the check would be the end. Quiet, simple, buried. What he didn't realize was that the moment I cashed it, I wasn't just closing a chapter, I was opening a movement. And it started with 3 women in a coffee shop. I'd rented a loft near my old high school to finalize the launch of the Charlotte Fund. It wasn't fancy, exposed brick, faint smell of espresso from the bakery downstairs, but it was mine. No trust fund, no inheritance. Just hard truth and harder-earned revenge. A week after the fund's website went live, I got my first 3 applicants. Not bots. Not pity letters. Real women. Real stories. And the kind of broken that only gets healed by being seen. 1. Daniela, 34, left with $62,000 in credit card debt her ex racked up in her name. He ghosted with a new girlfriend in Dubai. Her apartment was being repossessed. She was a nurse. 2. Kelsey, 29. Her startup failed after her business partner, also her fiancé, embezzled investor funds and blamed her. She now worked 3 part-time jobs while he spoke on panels about failing forward. 3. Renee, 41. She stayed home with the kids for 13 years. Her husband filed for divorce, claimed she contributed nothing, and offered her 20% of the house they bought together. She didn't have a lawyer. Each story hit a nerve. And I knew then, this wasn't just a fund. It was a mirror. For every woman who'd been told, just move on. For every gaslight voice. For every story like mine that never got even a whisper of justice. I approved all 3 grants within 48 hours. I knew the risk. The fund wasn't massive. But that check from Owen? It was meant to create something better than silence. I gave each woman the same note. This doesn't fix what he did. But it fixes what it broke in you. Start again. You are not alone. Daniela emailed me a week later. Subject line, got the keys back. She'd secured her apartment again. Renee found a pro bono attorney who called the fund a blessing in disguise. Kelsey used her grant to crowdfund a new idea, one that would go on to raise $250,000 in 6 months. Their stories grew. And so did the whispers. Until one day, I got a text. From Grace. Grace, 9:17 a.m. Saw the article. Who is the woman behind the Charlotte Fund? You planning to tell me that's you? I stared at the message. Then replied. Me 9:18 a.m. Come over. I'll show you everything. She arrived with her usual sarcasm and a bag of bagels. We sat on my balcony, and I told her everything. The floorboard. The cash. The tape. Owen's betrayal. The forged trust. The check. Her face was unreadable. When I finally stopped talking, she sipped her coffee and said, "You always were the dramatic one." I blinked. Then she added, "Thank God for that. Dad would have wanted this. Honestly, I wish I'd found that box. I would have set Owen's car on fire." We laughed. Hard. And for the first time since the funeral, we stopped being strangers pretending to share DNA. We became sisters again. 2 weeks later, the Charlotte Fund got national press. An online magazine for women in tech ran a full feature, calling it a quiet rebellion powered by the betrayed. I didn't name Owen. I didn't need to. The story stood on its own. But Owen? He reached out. A cryptic text. Owen, 4:41 p.m. You're not done, are you? Me 4:42 p.m. Were you? He didn't respond. 3 days later, a new fund was announced. The Prescott Family Foundation, pledging $2 million toward digital equity for underserved youth. What a performance. I rolled my eyes and moved on. The biggest twist came on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after my site went viral. I got a call from a woman with a clipped British accent. "Ms. Harper, this is Amina Valari from the Global Equity Forum. You've been nominated for our Catalyst Award." I thought it was a scam. Until she sent the email. The nomination was real. The ceremony? In London. The prize? A keynote address at the summit, and a $100,000 grant to scale your impact. I booked a flight. Grace insisted on coming. "You need someone to clap the loudest," she said, winking. The night before the summit, I sat alone in my hotel room, rereading every email from the women the Charlotte Fund had helped. There were now over 600. Single moms. Aspiring founders. Divorced professionals trying to reclaim their names. All of them had found something Owen never could buy. Clarity. The understanding that pain doesn't make you weak. That starting over isn't a step back. That some legacies are forged not by inheritance, but by intention. And just as I closed my laptop, a message popped up. New submission, anonymous. You don't know me, but I know Owen. I was there the night he found the money in your house. I was his alibi, and I want to make it right. I didn't recognize the sender's name. Just a blank email with no subject line and a single paragraph that read like a confession. You don't know me, but I was there. Owen didn't find the money by accident. He broke into the furnace room after your dad went into the hospital. I helped him carry it out. I regret it. I want to talk. At first, I didn't move. The cursor blinked like a silent dare. This wasn't some anonymous Reddit comment. It was real. Someone knew what happened that night, the night it all began, and they weren't hiding anymore. I responded. Meet me. Public place. No cameras. Tomorrow, noon. Message me if you agree. I chose a quiet tea shop in the city, where students and seniors shared space and no one paid attention to anything but their mugs. At 12:02 p.m., a woman in her mid-30s walked in, wearing dark glasses and a scarf even though it was 78 degrees outside. She spotted me instantly. I didn't stand. Just looked her in the eye as she sat down. You're Charlotte, she said. And you're? Monica. No last name. She glanced around. Is this place safe? Safer than trusting Owen, I said. That earned a bitter smile. She reached into her tote and pulled out a small notepad. I'll make this quick, she said, flipping to a page. Owen met your dad a year before he died. He was friendly, charming. Showed interest in the old furnace plans. He always pretended not to care, I murmured. That was a lie, she said. He cared a lot. Too much. Monica sipped her tea. I was seeing him casually. It wasn't serious. But he roped me into helping him after he claimed your father was gone for a week and he had a key. Said he wanted to fix the furnace and surprise your family. My throat tightened. He already knew what was in there. She nodded. I didn't. I thought he was being sweet. Then he ripped the panel off and pulled out a duffel bag full of money. I clenched my fists. He laughed. Said, your family had a fortune all along. They just didn't know how to use it. Then he asked me to help him carry it out. Why didn't you say anything? She stared down. Because he paid me. 20 grand. She looked up. And I hated myself for it. Still do. I leaned forward. Why now? Monica's eyes welled. Because I saw your story. The fund. The women you're helping. And because karma doesn't let you sleep. I have nightmares. She pulled out a flash drive. I kept copies. Emails. Plans. Photos. You'll want this. I took it with a shaky hand. Then asked the question I'd been holding back. Did he ever say why he wanted it so badly? What the rush was? She nodded. Said he had debts. Gambling, mostly. But also, something else. He said someone was after him. That if he didn't get seed money fast, he'd disappear like his old business partner. Disappear. Monica nodded again. I don't know what it means. But I think Owen's involved in more than just stealing from you. The tea shop felt smaller suddenly. Tighter. Colder. I'd thought Owen's betrayal had a bottom. But clearly, I hadn't reached it yet. Back at the loft, I opened the flash drive. There were dozens of files, voice notes, maps of the crawl space, messages from burner emails, and one audio clip titled simply, Don't. I clicked play. Owen's voice. You can't tell her. I don't care what she finds out. If Charlotte comes to you, you shut it down. She's a storm looking for something to destroy. Click. Then silence. I stared at the screen. My storm had arrived. And Owen knew it. I called Grace. I need to tell you something. 30 minutes later, we sat across from each other again. I handed her the flash drive. This proves everything. She listened. Watched. Scanned. When it ended, she looked at me and said, You realize this could ruin him? That's the point. No, I mean, fully ruin him. Jail. Fines. Public scandal. Good. She leaned back. Then I'm with you. I blinked. You are. Grace nodded. He used Dad. He used you. He tried to erase us. I want him to answer for that. I felt tears threaten. Not because of Owen, but because for the first time in our adult lives, Grace and I were on the same side. Not as estranged sisters, but as allies. We drafted the plan together. Step 1. Prepare legal documentation with timestamps, Monica's testimony, and digital forensics from the flash drive. Step 2. Contact the investigator from the original estate division, Dad's probate attorney, who always suspected missing assets. Step 3. Leak just enough to Owen's investor circle that someone begins asking uncomfortable questions. We didn't need to shout. We just needed to whisper in the right ears. And whispers travel fast. 2 weeks later, Owen's name was trending. Not because of his foundation. Because of a single sentence in a shareholder leak. Prescott's initial seed capital may have come from undocumented sources connected to a deceased veteran. Someone in his circle panicked. They leaked. Then the reporters came. CNBC called it one of the quietest frauds of the decade. Reddit called it the messiest tech bro takedown since Theranos. I just called it justice. He called me. Blocked number. 2 a.m. I let it ring 4 times. Then answered. You win, he said. I'm not playing. I'll give it back. Whatever's left. I laughed. You can't buy your way out of this anymore, Owen. Not with lawyers. Not with donations. The money isn't the point. He was silent. Then, you'll destroy me. No, I said. You did that all on your own. Click. That night, I slept. Really slept. No pacing. No planning. Just quiet. Because the storm he feared had passed. And in its place, clear skies. And something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The front page of the Financial Tribune read, Techstars rise funded by family fraud? Below it, Owen's face, looking slightly more hollow than usual. The same face that once whispered promises into my neck at 2 a.m. was now being dissected by forensic accountants and cable news hosts. Every smiling headshot now appeared alongside phrases like misappropriation of inheritance, offshore laundering, and probate obstruction. And to think, he could have just said thank you. By the time the third major outlet picked up the story, Monica had agreed to go public. Not by name, just by audio. She spoke clearly, emotionally, and without hesitation. Her words aired during a prime-time exposé. I helped him. I regret it. I didn't know the full extent, but I saw enough. That money wasn't his to take. It was all I needed. Grace and I watched the broadcast together, popcorn between us, jaws clenched tighter than the bowl. For once, we weren't crying over grief. Just marveling at karma's perfect timing. This could go federal, she said. I hope it does. I didn't expect to feel pity. But I did, just for a second. The next morning, Owen's lawyer released a damage control statement claiming financial miscommunication, family misunderstandings, and a shared legacy. He called the situation complex. Complex? Try insulting. His foundation froze donations within 24 hours. Sponsors pulled out of events. A speaking engagement in Berlin was cancelled before he could board his flight. And through it all? I said nothing. Not a tweet. Not a whisper. Because some storms don't need thunder to leave wreckage. They just need truth. Then came the letter. A real, printed letter. Hand-delivered by courier. Cream envelope, expensive ink, gold seal. It read, Dear Charlotte, I know I can't undo what's been done. I know saying sorry won't mean anything to you. But I hope one day, you'll understand that I wasn't just stealing money, I was stealing time. Time I couldn't get back. Time I wasted chasing things that didn't matter. That hiding place gave me more than cash. It gave me an excuse. And I used it to escape myself. I lost more than a fortune. I lost you. I hope you build something better than what I destroyed. Owen. I read it twice. Then burned it in my sink. And as the ashes swirled down the drain, I whispered to no one in particular. I already have. The Charlotte Fund exploded after that. Not because of Owen, but because women saw themselves in it. More than 1,400 new applications rolled in within a week. We started regional chapters. Local therapists donated hours. Legal firms offered pro bono counsel. Anonymous donors began wiring 5- and 6-figure gifts. And then came the phone call that left me speechless. It was from a producer. A woman named Tessa, working with a streaming platform known for its documentary dramas. I read the story, she said. The hiding place. The betrayal. The fund. It's not just a story. It's a statement. We want to option the rights. I blinked. You want to make it into a show? Limited series. 6 episodes. We'll protect names. But we think this story matters. I didn't respond immediately. Because I needed to ask myself, was I ready to share the ugliest part of my life on screen? Would the power of helping others outweigh the exposure? I asked Grace that night. Her answer? Only if I get to cast your sister. We laughed until we couldn't breathe. And when I finally signed the contract, I did so not with vengeance in my heart, but with clarity. The kind that only comes after you've stared down your past, unpacked it, and found something beautiful beneath all the rubble. The final twist came at the courthouse. A closed hearing for Owen's restitution case. I wasn't required to attend, but I went anyway. Not for drama. For closure. The judge asked him if he had anything to say. He turned toward me, hair thinner, suit looser, face drained of the charm that once disarmed me. I wronged her, he said quietly. She gave me trust, and I gave her theft. I deserve this. I didn't nod. I didn't cry. I just met his eyes with the calm of someone who's already rebuilt everything he tried to ruin. The gavel fell. Restitution ordered, $1.3 million. Community service. 2 years probation. Public apology. He walked out without looking back. I walked out free. That night, I returned to the old house. It had been cleaned up since the estate sale. Grace and I agreed we wouldn't sell it. Not yet. I went to the basement. Kneeling by the furnace, I placed a single object there, a copy of my documentary contract. Then, for good measure, I added a page from the Charlotte Fund's latest report, showing over $1.8 million distributed to women across 11 states. This is the legacy now, I whispered. No longer hidden. No longer stolen. Just earned. I never imagined that one dusty panel in a furnace room would lead me to London, New York, Los Angeles, and back home again. But here I was, standing in front of an auditorium of 2,000 people at the Global Women's Resilience Summit, about to tell my story, our story. The lights dimmed. My heels clicked across the wooden stage as I took the mic. The audience hushed. And then I spoke. I was raised in a family that believed in legacy, but never talked about it. My father was a veteran. Quiet. Disciplined. He kept secrets, not out of shame, but out of protection. One of those secrets was hidden under a floorboard. I found it after he passed away: cash, documents, and a truth that unraveled everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and family. I paused. The room leaned in. I found out that my ex-boyfriend, someone I once thought would be my forever, stole it. Every dollar. Disguised it as his own startup capital. Built a life, a brand, and a fortune on what wasn't his to take. I watched heads nod, faces shift. Some looked angry. Others heartbroken. All of them listening. But this isn't a story about money. It's about what we build when everything is taken from us. It's about not just recovering, but redefining. I didn't go to the press out of spite. I didn't sue to get even. I started the Charlotte Fund to turn pain into purpose. A standing ovation erupted before I could even finish. For the first time, I didn't cry when I told the story. Because I had lived past it. Backstage, Grace was waiting with her phone up, already texting screenshots of my standing ovation to our group chat. "This means you're officially a global phenomenon," she teased. "I was always global," I joked. "Just undiscovered." Her laugh made the entire journey worth it. We headed straight from the summit to the after party. I stayed for 20 minutes, took a few photos, gave a quote to The Guardian, then slipped away quietly. Fame wasn't the prize. Freedom was. Back in the US, I received a small manila envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a note. Charlotte. I didn't expect to feel lighter. But I do. Telling the truth changes people. Thank you for forcing me to become someone I can face in the mirror. Monica. There was no address to reply to. But I smiled anyway. Some wounds don't need closure. Just acknowledgement. The Charlotte Fund had grown far beyond what I ever imagined. We had 11 chapters in 8 countries. A digital platform in beta. Over 3,500 women helped, some with $500 to get back on their feet, others with $50,000 to relaunch their businesses, fight custody battles, or hire investigators to prove what they already knew. We were changing narratives. One heartbreak at a time. And when the documentary premiered, titled Hidden in the Floorboards, the reviews poured in. Raw and empowering. A story of loss, theft, and unshakable strength. Not just about revenge. About rebirth. They got it. They finally got it. Owen? He disappeared. Not literally, but publicly. His foundation folded. His LinkedIn scrubbed. Rumors swirled that he moved to Bali, living on what was left of his crypto fortune. Every now and then, someone would email me a blurry photo of a man on a beach, asking, "Is this him?" I never answered. Not because I didn't know, but because it no longer mattered. He was a footnote in a story that no longer centered him. Grace and I renovated the old house. It took 6 months. We preserved the furnace room. Not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder of how things can hide in plain sight: truth, inheritance, betrayal, potential. We turned it into a retreat for women rebuilding their lives. They came from all walks of life: teachers, nurses, former executives, single mothers. We called it the Foundation House. Because real foundations aren't built with cement. They're built with resilience. On the 1-year anniversary of Dad's passing, Grace and I held a memorial at the house. Just family. The chosen kind. We read letters we never sent him. Lit candles. Ate his favorite meal, pot roast with too much garlic and an absurd amount of mashed potatoes. Before we left, I tucked a final letter into the crawlspace behind the furnace. Dear Dad, you didn't leave instructions. But you left enough. Enough for me to know I was stronger than I believed. That I could love without being ruined. That legacies aren't passed down, they're made. I hope I made you proud. Love. Charlotte. Then I sealed it shut. For good. Months passed. The media frenzy died down. The fund operated smoothly. And I traveled, not for interviews or keynotes, but for joy. Morocco. Ireland. Kyoto. I even went bungee jumping in New Zealand. Grace refused. I value my spine, she claimed. And in the quiet of those solo nights, I thought about who I used to be. The woman who believed the best way to preserve her father's legacy was to protect it. And the woman I became, the one who shared it. Loudly. Unapologetically. Because when your truth gets stolen, the only revenge worth having is to turn it into light. I now get letters almost daily. Some handwritten. Some typed. All of them stories. Of women who walked away from liars. Of girls who found out their inheritance was love, not land. Of mothers who fought custody battles and won. Of daughters who became the very role models they never had. They all end with some version of the same thing. Thank you for being brave first. It helped me be brave next. And I think, maybe that's what legacy really is. Not money. Not houses. Not names carved into gates. But courage. Shared. Spoken. Lived out loud. And given freely. To anyone standing on the other side of betrayal, wondering if they're strong enough to start over. You are. Because I did. And I'll keep doing it. Until no woman has to fight in silence again.